magandang hapon, mayong hapon. Okay? So, bagong adlaw, bagong adlaw, bagong higayon, yung makat-on sarang adlaw. Good afternoon, everyone. New day, a new opportunity for us to learn. So, today is April 23, 2024, and it's another time for Science 9 and Araling Panlipunan 9. So, yesterday, I have promised that we will be tackling a new topic in Science 9, and I will also be introducing a new sector, bagong sektor sa ating Araling Panlipunan 9. So, bagong topic po tayo ngayon sa ikatatlong linggo ng Abril. Ikatatlo ba? Ikaapat na pala. Ikaapat na linggo ng Abril. Okay? So, we will be talking about a new topic in Science 9. Hope you are tuned in, chilling in the comfort of your home, and hopefully you are tucked in, cool, and chill in your houses. Okay? So, last time we have talked about, in Science 9, we have talked about projectile motion. How an object can move horizontally and vertically at the same time, and how do we describe its motion through kinematic equations and its derivatives. Kumbaga, derivations. How do we know how long it takes for that object flying through the air to reach its height? Pila ka segundo, pila ka oras ang kinahanglan para makaabot siya sa pinakataas niya. Pila ka segundo ang iyang paglupad yun mismo, full time of flight. And we have also calculated how high it went, its maximum height, and how far it went, its range. That is in the vertical. When we're talking about maximum height, it is in the vertical. And when we're talking about the maximum distance in the horizontal direction, we are talking about its range. So, today we will be talking about a new quality or a new description. Still, it is in the realm of kinematics, but we will be describing moving objects in a different manner. So, let me share. So, we will be talking about impulse and momentum. Specifically, first, momentum muna and then impulse. Okay? So, this is a new description. Hindi man siya new, but a different description of moving matter. Okay? So, let's start with our simple lesson outline for today and over the next days. So first, we will talk about what is momentum, and then later on, what is impulse, and then how do we relate these two concepts, momentum, impulse, to colliding objects, mga nagbangga nga mga butang. So, let's talk about this one. So, kabawa ko pagkahuman pa lang sa piyesta sa Oboob, shoutout ulit sa mga estudyante naton and sa mga namista sa Oboob. Pagkahuman pa lang sa basketball tournament and other sports tournaments pa dira sa Oboob. Now, let's say we have seen this again and again, while in a while. Basketball teams, once they start scoring, they quote-unquote gain momentum against their opponent after shooting a three-pointer, the next two-pointer, and then another two-pointer comes along. Daw dili sila makapugnan, maksugod sila, makahunat sila, maka-gain sila sang ilang momentum. Now, what do we mean by that? They are mass, and they have their masses, they have their bodies, but the motion that they have, the scores that they pile up again and again and again, it creates a different direction for the team. May aray padulngan ang ilang paghampang. So, we are talking about momentum. May ara sila'y hunat o nakakabuelo na sila once they start scoring more and more and more. Now, when we're talking about moving objects, we have to consider when we're talking about moving objects, we have to consider the following. So, before we really define momentum, let's consider what a moving object has. Okay? If we're talking about a moving object, syempre, it has to have mass. Matter is anything that occupies space and has mass. May ara siya'y kabug-aton, kag may ara siya'y spasyo nga gi-okupar o may ara siya'y lugar na iyang gi-sakop. When we're talking about moving objects, of course, we're looking at objects that has mass. And then, once we're talking about moving objects, we have objects that are moving, they have a measurement, they have a velocity. May ara sila'y how fast are they moving how fast are they moving in space? Gano sila kapaspas na naglihok sa aton sa spasyo o sa space, and then what is their direction? So that is the components of velocity. We have your magnitude of speed and then the direction of the movement. So once we're talking about moving objects and then later on momentum, we need to consider that objects that are moving have mass and objects that are moving have velocity. Okay? So let's move on to defining what is momentum. Now, momentum is any moving object. Momentum is a quality where any moving object with a quantity of matter has momentum. If may ara katay butang nga naglihok, may ara katay butang nga may kabug-aton, kag naglihok siya, naa siya'y momentum. Now, simply put, momentum means mass in motion. Butang na may kabug-aton nga naglihok. Now, if we want to express it mathematically, because math helps us define concepts in science, specifically in physics, it is equal to the product of mass and velocity. Ang aton momentum, the momentum of an object can simply be calculated or can simply be described as the product of mass and velocity. Multiplication lang. Gi-multiply lang naton ang kabug-aton sang aton butang kag ang kapaspason sang iyang paglihok. Okay? So, mayara kita. Now, we have here your mathematical description of momentum. Mathematically, it is expressed as P is equal to M multiplied by V, where, as you can see right here, the letter P is our symbol for the momentum of our moving object. The unit of it is kilogram meter per second. Okay. Now, we also have M. M is the mass of the moving object, which is in the SI unit, kilogram. And then V is the velocity of the moving object, which is in the SI unit, or the System International Unit of meters per second. So ang unit ni momentum is just a multiplication of these two units, kilogram and meter per second. So the unit for momentum is kilogram meter per second. Ano lang siya? Kilogram multiplied to meters per second. Okay? That's the simplest mathematical description of momentum. It's just a multiplication. I-multiply lang natin ang mass kag velocity. Simple as that. Now, aton siyang himayon. Let's start looking at its implications in the real world. Now, aton siyang lantawon. Let's look at it this way. Kung kaybaw kita nga ang momentum is a product of mass and velocity, nanuayhan ang momentum sa usa ka butang kung wa siya maglihok. What is the momentum of an object that is not moving? Nanuayhan ang iyang momentum. Now, again, if we would look at this, the equation right there, P or momentum is equal to mass times multiplied to velocity. Now, tanawon naton. Let's say for example, ang aton gamiton sini diri nga example ining goal post, ining goal mismo sang soccer field. Mayara siya kabug-aton. Yes. Pero naglihok ba ang aton goal post? No. So, if maglihok ang aton goal post, nano ayan ang iyang velocity? I'll give you 3 seconds. Tungod kay wa siya maglihok, its velocity is 0 meters per second. Wa man siya maglihok. It's not moving to the left, to the right, where other directions. It is just standing still. Ara lang siya sa atubangan naton. It is just 0 meters per second. So, now, may ara siya kabug-aton. Siguro sultihan na naton mga 50 kilograms ang iyang kabug-aton sina nga goal post. Bugat lang gyapon nina. Pero any number multiplied to 0 is 0. Wa gyapon. 0 meters per second. Imong gi-multiply sa 50 kilograms, it would just be 0 kilogram meter per second squared. So, if any object of any mass, bisan nano nga kabug-aton, is not moving, wa siya maglihok, it has 0 momentum. Wala siya'y momentum. Wala siyang buwelo. Wa siya'y hunat. Tungod ang iyang velocity kay 0. Because it doesn't have any velocity, it doesn't have any momentum. Wala siya'y momentum nga gidala. Now, paano naman, sir? Kung meron na tayong paano naman yan, sir, kapag ganito? What is the momentum? Let's say, for example, may bola na napadung sa aton goal post. Walang siya mag-animate, but may ara kay bola nga padung sa aton goal. What is the momentum of an object that is moving at a known velocity? What if, let's say may ara katay, ang bola naton is just a kilogram. Simple lang. Just it weighs, di siguro kilogram. Let's say 500 grams or half a kilogram ang aton bola. And then it is moving at a known velocity. Let's say for example 5 meters per second. Paspas na latin na siya. 5 meters per second ang iyang dala. What is the momentum of that object? Now, kung balikon naton, again, the momentum of an object is equal to the mass of the moving object, ang iyang kabug-aton, multiplied by the velocity of that object. So sa aton, let's say sa ang aton example, ang aton soccer ball kay 500 grams or 0.5 kilogram. And then nagjagan siya. Ang iyang velocity is 5 meters per second. Once i-multiply natin siya, it will result to its momentum. So 0.5 multiplied by 5 meter. 0.5 kilograms multiplied by 5 meters per second. So, kung aton siya nahon, the momentum of a moving object is just the product of the mass of the object and its velocity. So, kung aton siya i-calculate, 0.5 kilograms multiplied by meters per second, that would be 2.5 kilogram meter per second. That's just its momentum. Amo na ang aton yan. Sir, later lang. Yan, amo na siya ang aton description. The ball has its momentum. Naglihok man siya because it is moving, it has momentum. Now, na naman ang quantity, na naman ang numero behind that. Kaya bakit ang ara siya momentum? It is just a product of its mass and its velocity. Muna na siya ang iano. Now, let's dive deeper into its concept. Pagkayon. Nano ay hanang kaibaw na kita, so nano ang momentum. Now, like all things in the world, things change. Now, let's look at these questions. Let's look at these conceptual questions so that we can lead to something more than momentum. Okay? Sige, sugdan natin. Let's suppose nga aran nga let's say bakasyon na, padong na kita, gikan na kamo, nakabakasyon kamo somewhere and pauwi na. So, you rode a bus from Cebu City to Hagnaya Port. What do you think will happen to the bus after it passes a curvy road? Let's say, for example, maagi na kamo sa bahin nga pa, inang pakorba-korba na. What would happen to the bus after it passes a curvy road? Kinang magpahinay ba ang bus? Will it slow down? Will it move faster? Or the velocity of the bus will not change? Once again, this is a question that has, mukhang madali lang siya ha, but look at it. And medyo may pagka-practical na siya. Bus, mo paspas ba ang aton bus? Mo hinay ba aton bus? Mo paspas ba aton bus? Or dili mabag-o ang iyang velocity? Think of it. And let's move on to the next question. Let's say, after sang liko-liko na daan, ara na, dire-diretso na ang aton ang kalsada. How will you describe the velocity of the bus? Nano aya na mahitabo sa velocity sang aton bus? Siyempre, nagdali kita. Will it increase? Mupaspas ba ang jagan sang aton bus? Muhinay ba ang jagan sang aton bus? O way pagbag-o? Parehas gyapon ang jagan niya paggawas gikan sa liko-liko nga daan. So, how will you describe the velocity of the bus? Will it increase? Is it increasing? It is decreasing, or it will not change at all. Nano ay na mahitabo? Hold that thought. Let's move on to the next one. So, inani naman. What if, gikan sa Cebu City, padong sa may araman sang mga agianan ng mga bus stop. So, sa bus, maluwag. 25 lang, 25 lang ka pasahero. Di kayo sakay. Along the way, may 5 kuno na nanaog sa bus stop sa Carmen, sa bus stop. And then, after dito sa bagong nga Bogo niya City Hall sang Bogo, may aralat sang nanaog nga upat. What can you say na ang imo masulti sa kabug-aton sang bus na? Ni taas ba ang kabug-aton sang aton bus? Ni gaan ba o ni ubos ang kabug-aton sang aton bus? Or why pagbag-o sa kabug-aton sang aton bus? Nano nahitabo? What happened? Now, let's look at the practical answers to this one. So, kung ara siya, kung pakurba ang daan, syempre magpahinay. The bus will slow down to accommodate the curves. Now, ngayon dili man pwede man gayud sir nga ang nadili magbago ang kapaspason sang bus. But then again, velocity is change in either magnitude or direction. Paliko-liko nga ang daan, di ba? So, bahalang dili mabag-o ang kapaspason sa aton bus, pero nagbag-o man ang direction, sige magliko-liko. So, there is a change in velocity. A change in velocity can either be a change in direction or a change in the magnitude sa kapaspason mismo. So, ang pinaka-logical nga answer would be letter A. Now, after the curvy road, kundi syempre, libre na kayo. Syempre, kung nagdali si bus, it would be normally, it would be increasing. Okay? Nagpahinay man di kan sa kurba-karbada na daan. So, practical lang lahat ng tubag is letter A. How about this one? Syempre, tungod kay nagpagaan man, nagkanaog ka tay 5 ka pasahero, nya upat pagid ka pasahero, syempre, naibanan ang kabug-aton sang aton bus. It decreased. The mass of the bus decreased along the way. Now, in all of these things, may aray na bag-o sa aton bus nga gisakyan. It's either nabago ang iyang velocity, nihinay siya, o nipaspas siya, and then, ang aton mass is nabago. In this case, nigaan. Pero pwede lahat nga, magsakay pala ang aton bus sang mga pasahero pa. So, the mass can also increase. So, if these two quantities can change, your mass and velocity can change. Therefore, pwede lahat magbago ang aton momentum. Haing gani nakabase si momentum? Nakabase siya sa aton mass and velocity. So, there could be a change in momentum when there is a change in velocity, meaning ang aton object kay ni slow down o ni speed up, ni hinay o ni paspas, or there is a change in mass. Kung ang aton object kay ni bugat o ni gaan, may aray change lahat sang iyang momentum. Now, when we are describing this change in momentum, we are talking about its impulse. Now, kung aton hinumduman, balikan naton kadali. When we're describing momentum, it is a product of mass and velocity. Once may mabag-o sa mass, or mabag-o sa velocity, or mabag-o ining duha, there will be a change in momentum. Now, that change in momentum, we define that as the term impulse. Okay? So, if there is a change in the velocity or the mass of an object, there is also a change in momentum. That change of momentum is called impulse. May aragan a change in momentum, that is what we call impulse. Mathematically, if we would write it down, this is it. Letter I, capital letter I, is the symbol for impulse, or the impulse on the moving object. And then, later on, equal sign, our delta P, we read that triangle P, we read that as delta P, that is the change in the object's momentum. So, once may harakatay object, it is moving at a certain velocity, may ara siya kabugaton. Once it slows down or speeds up, ang iyang velocity mag-change. Either mo increase or decrease lang. Once mag-change ang iyang momentum, we now have impulse. But if it's not changing any of those parameters, kung dili siya mugaan o mubugat, walay pagbago sa mass, kag walay pagbago sa iyang velocity, dili siya ni paspas, dili siya ni hinay, there is no change in momentum, and therefore there is no impulse. Actually, I've led you to this question right here. Now, what do you think is the impulse of an object moving with constant momentum? So let's say for example, balikan naton atong bola nga naglihok kanina. ang bola, itong soccer ball natin ano nato. We are talking about the soccer ball na may aray siya mass, it is half a kilogram, and may aray siya velocity na 5 meters per second. So we know that it has a momentum of 2.5 kilogram meter per second. Let's say for example, inana ang iya momentum. Now, if it's moving at a constant momentum, what do you think will be its impulse? Let that sink in for a while. Okay. Now, once we're talking about this one, remember the word constant. Again, constant, once mo mention kita constant, constant means there is no change. Walay pagbago sa aton momentum. If there is no change in our momentum, we can definitely say that there is no impulse for objects, no impulse, or ibutang man natin sa quantity, there is zero impulse for objects moving with constant momentum. Kung may object kita na naglihok, pero way pagbago sa iyang velocity, way pagbago sa iyang mass o kabug-aton, that object does not have an impulse. Wala siya'y quantity for impulse. It has no impulse. It has zero impulse. Okay? Now, so that's basically your first two concepts right there. That's your first two concepts right there. Ari ang aton. That's your first two concepts right here. What is momentum and what is impulse? Impulse, let's start with momentum. Momentum is mass in motion. Mass in motion. If we have a moving mass and moving object, we have momentum. Now, if that object is not moving, it doesn't have momentum. Kung may ara siya velocity, kung naglihok siya, momentum is just a product of the object's mass and the object's velocity. Ang iyang kabug-aton kag ang iyang kapaspason. Aton lang i-multiply. Now, ang impulse naman kay ang change sang momentum. May arabay pagbago sa iyang momentum, may arabay pagbago sa iyang mass. Nigaan ba siya or nibugat? Or nipaspas ba siya or nihinay? Is there a change in its velocity? If either of those two mahitabo, there is a change in velocity. A change in change in impulse. If both of them walay pagbago, there is no impulse. Okay? So kung walay pagbago sa mass, walay pagbago sa velocity, there is zero or no impulse for our object. Okay? So, muna siya ang aton first two concepts right there. We have your first two concepts, what is momentum and what is velocity. What is momentum and what is impulse. Muna siya ang aton duha ka concepts na aton natakol. So tomorrow, I know it's a bit too short, medyo maaga pa ho. Simple lang, around 3:40 pa lang po. This is just an introduction to our first concept, to our new concept today, which is impulse and momentum. Nauuna pa. Impulse and momentum. We are just introducing these concepts, and then tomorrow we'll be talking about a little bit more practical and a little bit more mathematical. What is in these, how do we view now colliding objects? Paano natin sila pwedeng tingnan? Using the concepts of momentum and impulse. Okay? And then we will eventually insert some mathematics into it. because, again, we are in the concept or somehow in the field of kinematics for this quarter. We are trying to describe moving objects through numbers and equations. Okay? So last time ang atong gihisgutan is projectile motion, which is about describing an object that is flying or moving through horizontally and vertically at the same time. So we are describing it through equations. We have our 4 equations: time to fly, time to peak, full time of flight, height, and range. That's it. That has been given to you. Nahatag na siya sa module and sa atong problem set. Also, now we have already brushed through the simple concept of momentum and impulse. Momentum is just mass in motion. Kapag may naglihok kita na butang, if an object has mass and it is moving, it has momentum. And momentum is described as the product of your mass and the velocity of the moving object. And then, if there is any changes sa aton object, whether it is changing in mass, nigaan siya or nibugat, or may a change in velocity, nipaspa siya or nihinay, that constitutes a change in our that creates a change in our momentum. Once we have a change in momentum, we can define it, or we can say that it has impulse. May aray value, may aray quantity that describes the impulse on that moving object. Because nagbago ang iya mass, there is a change in mass, or there is a change in velocity. Okay? So, tomorrow, we will be applying that to colliding objects. Nanong mahitabo? How do we describe colliding objects? Magbangga nga mga objects. And then, we will be also talking about later on how do we use these concepts: momentum, impulse, colliding objects, and then later on, eventually, the mathematical side will be a law describing what happens when we have momentum in a system of moving bodies. May ara kita i-consider ng mga moving bodies. How does momentum move or transfer from one object to the next? Later on, we will be talking about the law of conservation of momentum. Okay? So, I know it's a bit too early. Delayed ako nag-start around 3:15, but we have finished the lesson at around 3:45 for Science 9. So, I will be giving you a 5-minute break. You can tune away or pwede ana balikan. By around 3:50, I will be returning to start our new discussion on Araling Panlipunan 9. Na marami na tayo na pag-usapang mga sektor na nag-aambag sa pambansang pag-unlad. Napag-usapan na natin ang sektor ng agrikultura at sektor ng industriya. Meron tayong bagong sektor na idadagdag at ito, ang sektor ng paglilingkod. So, mamaya at around 3:50, babalik po tayo para sa Araling Panlipunan 9 time. Yun lamang. So, see you later.